Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and we are coming today with my 53-man roster projection. We're going to have the whole depth chart. We're going to have starters, backups, and guys that are on the bubble. We're going to break down basically my whole prediction of what I think the 53-man roster will be once we get the cuts. Like, we're about like a week away now, and so this is before the preseason game against the Patriots, and of course, even though I doubt any of like the real starters or strong contributors will play in that game, this is going to be a big game coming up this Sunday, and I will be live streaming it for a lot of the guys that are on the bubble to fight for those last few spots. So I'm not expecting to hit 100% here, but I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to provide backing and logic and reasoning behind every selection that I made for each position group. Of course, this is a 53-man roster prediction. We're going to go every position group. I have the pictures with the names, all of that type of stuff. And so before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, daily content is no reason not to. It's so many things that I want to talk about. I have a Rico report that I'm loading up on with a lot of really cool stats about this offense, Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels, a whole bunch of stuff, man. So make sure you stay tuned. I also, through the NFL Plus or whatever it is, I actually have access to all 22 film this time, so you're gonna get some of those, especially for my channel members. And of course, I will be live streaming this upcoming preseason game against the Patriots, even though I highly doubt Jaden Daniels and most of, if not all of the starters will not play in that. But we still have a lot of players and position battles to break down in that preseason game. That's why it still matters, and I will be live streaming. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. Alright, so first of all, names that are in orange are just starters. Pure dogs. We know what we got in those guys, and I mean, they may not be the best of the best in certain positions and certain players, but we know they are for sure making the roster, and they will contribute heavily. Even if they're not necessarily out there specifically snap one of every play, they're going to contribute a lot. Then safe, you have rotational backup. And honestly, the only thing that I would change now that I'm thinking about it is the tight end room. I think those top three guys, all of their names should probably be orange, to be completely honest with you. But yellow, they're safe. They're going to make the 53-man roster. I'm assuming that they will. I feel like they're safe, but they will be a part of the rotation. They will be a backup. They're not a certified starter. Then you have names in white, not safe, on the bubble. I have some people making this 53-man roster whose names are in white. Some people that I do not have making this 53-man roster whose names are in white. You'll see I'll kind of have them small at like the bottom corner of the picture if I don't have them making the roster. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Of course, starting with the quarterbacks. Of course, we kept two in the original 53-man roster that we did last year, but of course, they've changed that now to where you're able to keep three of them, and it doesn't really count against you in any way, for real. So you're good to go there. We're gonna keep three. It's kind of like, why not keep three? And so you have Jaden Daniels, obviously already named the starter yesterday. Marcus Mariota as your second stringer, I'm assuming still at this point, but I like what I've seen from Jeff Driscoll, and so I wouldn't mind him being the second stringer, but at worst he's your third. And then Sam Hartman, I included him on the screen because maybe if he weren't hurt, maybe he would have had a chance to fight for one of these top, well, you know, only second and third spots. He had no chance at the #1 quarterback spot, honestly, but maybe he could have had a chance to, you know, go above Marcus Mariota or Jeff Driscoll to make the roster. I'm very confident in the fact, though, that Sam Hartman will not make this 53-man roster, and I'm also very confident in the fact that Sam Hartman will be added to the practice squad, and they will more than likely protect him to not allow anybody else to get him, or since he's still dealing with whatever shoulder injury he's dealing with right now. Marcus Mariota is dealing with a groin injury. That's why he hasn't participated. He didn't play in the last preseason game or that Dolphins joint practice because of it, and he left early, I believe, He only had one drive in that Jets preseason game. That's probably why. But Sam Hartman's dealing with a shoulder injury. Whatever it is more severe than Marcus Mariota's groin injury that he's dealing with right now. So Sam Hartman may not even necessarily end up on the practice squad, of course, nor the 53-man roster. He may start on like the injured reserve or something like that. We'll see where that goes. But they're going to find a way to keep him. They like Sam Hartman. They like his talent. They like the flashes that they've seen in him. I mean, they had to outbid other teams to even sign him as an undrafted free agent after the draft. So there was clear interest there. And then he showed flashes throughout the offseason, especially in training camp before he got hurt. So they're going to do whatever it takes to keep him around. They're not going to let the other team get him. So even if they got to do it like a little quick finesse of the system, you know, that little injury loophole, you know, you put him on IR, and granted he's required to miss a certain amount of time, but they prefer that than for him to end up on another team and then they never have a chance to have him on the roster. Now moving on to the running backs, Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler are obviously your starting running backs based on what I've seen in preseason and lately in training camp. Brian Robinson is going to get most of the carries, but Austin Eckler is probably going to be the guy that's out there on third downs. Even though I feel like Brian Robinson is extremely underrated, even in this fan base, as far as being a pass-catching running back. I mean, his ability now to explode after catching the ball, then he has really soft hands, so he can catch the ball better than he's given credit for. Even, again, amongst our own fan base, I feel like he's just ridiculously underrated. So this is a guy, my point is that he can play all three downs easily. But Austin Eckler does seem to be the better pass protector right now, and that's the name of the game for Jaden Daniels. So on third downs, Austin Eckler is going to be the guy that's out there. Not even necessarily just for his proven pass catching ability that we've seen at times with him being a touchdown machine a couple of years ago for the Chargers. I feel like if anything, he's going to get the edge over Brian Robinson on third downs just simply because he can pass protect better. I feel like that's the majority of the reason. Now, maybe as a pass catching back, Brian Robinson's underrated, but Austin Eckler maybe still has a slight edge on him there. But either way, and Brian Robinson, he has the build and the strength to be a good pass protector. It's all about technique, and Austin Eckler definitely has that technique. He's a more nuanced veteran. That's just how it goes. But Brian Robinson, man, don't sleep him in the passing game, and Austin Eckler, don't sleep on him in between the tackles. But we saw, like, this offense, Cliff Kingsbury is going to want to run the ball a lot. We saw that, like, Jaden Daniels dinking and dunking, I mean, orchestrating the offense beautifully, you know, trying to keep them safe, keeping a short time to throw average rating to where, like, I mean, the offensive line has no way of selling them and getting them blasted by defensive linemen, because we have injuries there right now, and even when everybody's fully healthy, which may be sooner than we think, hopefully, even with guys like Brandon Coleman, he's missed so much time that I'm not expecting him to just go out there and be dominant against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Jaden Daniels, they're probably that quick game that you saw against the Dolphins in that preseason game, you're probably going to see a lot of that early on until this offensive line figures it out and they gel with each other. Everybody gets it down packed. So until then, I think we're going to run the ball. That's my main point. We're going to run the ball a lot. And even when we do pass the ball, it's going to be like some short stuff, some quick timing, quick darts, you know, comebacks, maybe curls, out routes, you know, slants, whatever, drag routes. And if he does take a deep shot, it's probably going to be like the De'Ami Brown thing, where he doesn't even wait till there's separation. He's just throwing it as soon as he does like a quick 3-step drop, and he's just slinging it deep down the field, hoping the receiver gets there. I don't really see Jaden Daniels doing 5-step drops and scanning the field for a very long time. We're going to run the ball a lot, and Brian Robinson is going to be a huge part of that. Then you have Jeremy McNichols, and from what I've seen and heard so far, he seems to be the third running back. That's what it seems like. And Chris Rodriguez, I don't even have him on the screen because it doesn't seem like he's very likely to make the team. More so because in that Dolphins preseason game, maybe things change after the Patriots preseason game. But in that Dolphins preseason game, after Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler got out of the game, once the starters pretty much were done, it was just a battle between Jeremy McNichols and Michael Wiley. Just a straight up battle. And, you know, Jeremy McNichols and Michael Wiley are more so known as like the Austin Eckler archetypes, like the third down receiving back types. And Chris Rodriguez is more of like a Brian Robinson in between the tackles thumper type of guy. I mean, they just had a battle. It was just a Jeremy McNichols versus Michael Wiley just versus in that preseason game when it came to like the second stringers and third stringers. Chris Rodriguez came out way later, so it sounds like he's further down on the depth chart than I assumed. Like before the Dolphins game, I probably would have had Chris Rodriguez on the screen just because you have Jeremy McNichols, who is like Austin Eckler-like, and then you have Chris Rodriguez, who will be Brian Robinson-like. But now, based on what I'm seeing, it seems like we're going to have 3 primary third down backs and then 1 in between the tackles, thumper, bruiser type of running back, which is a really interesting way to go. But Even though we're going to run the ball a lot, Cliff Kingsbury seems to want his wide receivers to be able to catch the ball. And again, Brian Robinson is a thumper, a bruiser, in between the tackles type of running back, but this guy can catch the ball out of the backfield. He definitely can. Chris Rodriguez may be a little unproven there, and that may be just the name of the game right there. If you can't contribute as a pass-catching running back, you're not going to make this team. It's probably literally just that simple. Now moving on to the wide receivers. Right now, I only have us keeping 6, even though I can see an argument for 7. I can see Jamison Crowder. Maybe they just go ahead and anoint him as the starting punt returner, even though I liked what I saw from Olamide Zaccheaus. You even saw Luke McCaffrey get a couple of snaps as a punt returner, even though the Dolphins punter was so bad, he kept kicking it out of bounds to where we couldn't even actually really get a real competition going there for the punt return in that second preseason game. Like, we didn't even get to really evaluate that situation because the punter just kept hitting it out of bounds. I was so mad at him. I'm like, man, I want to see Luke McCaffrey attempt to return something. I want to see what this battle really looks like. So I'm assuming we're probably gonna have to handle that in practices leading up to these cuts, because these preseason punters aren't giving our guys an opportunity to even catch them. So obviously, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, De'Ami Brown are your top 3 receivers, even though right now, if I had to say, De'Ami Brown's probably wide receiver 2. Olamide Zaccheaus may be wide receiver 3. Jahan Dotson wide receiver 4, based off everything I'm hearing and seeing. But in my opinion, I feel like Jahan Dotson definitely has the talent. As a pure slot receiver, I don't see him ever really being an outside receiver that has to deal with press coverage at the NFL level. I don't really see that from him. He's too small, but I just feel like he's too shifty. I feel like his route running is too precise. I feel like that he can still be a good slot player for us. Luke McCaffrey, I feel like he's getting there. He was making plays against the Dolphins. At times, he made some contested catches. And then when he was out there with the backups, he looked like the most explosive player on the field. And when you look like a starter amongst backups, that shows, okay, maybe you shouldn't be out here with the backups. Maybe you need to be up there with the starters. We'll see. So that's why his name is in yellow. So obviously, your top 5 guys, that's clear. With the orange and yellow names that you have there, that's clear cut. I think Bryson Tremaine, if we only keep 6, but I can see the logic as to why they may want to keep 7, because we have heavy competition. You still have Byron Pringle back there. You have a lot of names. Davion Davis was out there getting reps with the ones at one time in training camp and was making plays. You just never know. But Bryson Tremaine, out of all of the, and then Martavis Bryant, we just signed him. He even forced the fumble after that Trace McSorley interception. I believe it was I forgot who it was. I think it was Cole Turner that dropped the pass, and it's really making me start to question Cole Turner, man. Golly, man. Y'all kept Cole Turner over my boy Armani Rogers, and he's the reason that Jaden Daniels got an interception against the Dolphins in the joint practice, and then Trace McSorley got an interception against the Dolphins in the preseason. But either way, after that interception happened, because Cole Turner has butterfingers, it was Martavis Bryant that was the one that like hit the ball out of the DB's hands as he was trying to return it, and then we got the ball back because of it. And plays like that stand out. And then even his very first day, the morning we announced that we signed him, that immediately, like within like an hour, once we started practice, his very first play on the field, he had a great block to allow Jamison Crowder to get a lot of yards on a screen. So ways like that, he's standing out. So don't sleep on Martavis Bryant potentially making his team. And also, Martavis Bryant and Bryson Tremaine are the only tall receivers we have on this team, so maybe he makes the roster because of that. But as of right now, I'm probably just going to give the edge to Jamison Crowder very, very slightly, just because Jamison Crowder could at worst be a starting punt returner. But again, I think I've seen enough from Olamide Zaccheaus to maybe he can be that guy. I thought he looked pretty good back there doing it. But at the very least, I know these are your top 6 receivers. When it comes to that 7th one, I think it's between Jamison Crowder, Byron Pringle, or Martavis Bryant that are fighting for that last spot. And as of right now, again, I mean, Byron Pringle, kick return, Jamison Crowder, punt return, Martavis Bryant, tall receiver. If either of those 3 guys ends up getting kept but as the 7th receiver, those are the reasons why for each of those individuals. Now moving on to the tight ends. Again, Cole Turner, man, you're making me mad. Y'all cut my boy Armani Rogers for him, and then he's out here literally handing interceptions to other teams, but it is what it is. Again, like I said earlier in the video, honestly, Zach Ertz, John Bates, and Ben Sinnott should all have orange names because they're all going to play a lot. John Bates blocking against the Dolphins was like best blocking tight end in the NFL title worthy. Like, it was ridiculous. A lot lot of the plays that we had, even in the screen game, running game, whatever, I mean, he was literally taking edge rushers out of the play, escorting them 5 yards down the field type of stuff. Insane. Dan Quinn has talked about him several times throughout training camp, hyped him up. They love that guy. So him, Zach Ertz, and Ben Sinnott, I mean, Ben Sinnott is undeniable. His talent, his versatility, he's going to play a lot as well. Those are your 3 guys. But I did kind of, the only reason I did this is because I wanted to make sure everybody knew that Zach Ertz right now is on another level, more so than anything else, because he's literally Jaden Daniels' favorite target right now. Like, including Terry McLaurin, including, you could say, Austin Eckler, whoever, De'Ami Brown, who's emerged, it looks like the second receiver on the team right now. Zach Ertz is the #1 target, and there's a pretty big gap. Then it's probably Terry McLaurin after that, then De'Ami Brown, and then we can go on from there. Zach Ertz is his super safety blanket, panic, just instant reflex. I don't know what's going on. I just need to get this ball out of my hands. Zach Ertz is that when in doubt, everything's going wrong, I know for a fact this guy can make a play for me. Remember, in the Jets joint practice, there was a 4th and 10 situation. Jaden Daniels threw it to Zach Ertz triple team. So just off rip there, before you even know what the result of the play was, the level of trust there to where Jaden Daniels is in a panic situation, he throws it to Zach Ertz, 4th and 10, triple covered rather than looking anywhere else. That just shows that in his brain, when things are breaking down, when things are chaotic, I'm looking for Zach Ertz. It's just a natural thing to where it's probably not even at the forefront of his mind. It's probably in his subconscious somewhere. Zach Ertz is somewhere when everything is just going wrong. And then on top of that, he caught it. On the 4th and 10, triple team came down with it against the Jets in that joint practice, man. Come on, dog. So that, I mean, I just feel like the only reason he deserves an orange name and other guys, maybe I should have made his red and then John Bates and Ben Sinnott orange, because they deserve their names orange, but Zach Ertz is just on a different level from all of those guys. He's literally Jaden Daniels' favorite target. If I had to bet who's going to get the most receptions in this offense this season, is Zach Ertz, man. And I think y'all may want to take note of that fantasy football wise. The only concern with him is can he stay healthy? But that's it. Moving on to interior offensive line, I only kept 5, even though I was starting to think of 6, but last regime kept 5 last year. Not to say that the next regime is going to do anything that the previous regime has ever done, because so far they have not. Since Adam Peters was hired here, they have not done anything the same as the previous regime in no way, shape, or form. But, you know, just roster construction wise, I'm just going based off of it's really hard to decide how many they're going to keep of every position. So I'm trying to stay as close to what the previous regime did, because that's really the only template I have to go off of, unless there's just a glaring difference where I'm like, nah, I know the previous regime did this, but I see this regime doing this just because of how our roster is currently constructed. We need more players in this position group. We don't need as many in this position group. I feel like interior offensive line is pretty standard. You know, you're starting left guard, you're starting center, you're starting right guard, and then Chris Paul is your backup guard, and Michael Dieter is your backup center. In my personal opinion, I feel like that's clear cut. Nobody else to even consider. I didn't even include another name in white, because that's just clear cut your favorite 5. If we so happen to keep 6, I mean, Julian Good-Jones looked pretty decent against the Dolphins, even though he looked terrible against the Jets. Y'all know, if there is a 6, though, it would probably be Ricky Strongberg. And I like his talent. I still feel like he's fairly underrated, but I mean, just based on how this new regime has treated him, I don't think they like him as much as I do. If it were up to me, I would keep 6 interior offensive linemen, and Ricky Strongberg would be that 6th. His name would be in white down there, and they would form like a little triangle formation on the screen. But again, this whole video is based on my projection, not what would I do, what I think they will do. And I mean, when you're looking at the depth chart they put out, he's behind Julian Good-Jones, and I think he's been bad this offseason. So you just never know, man. And Chris Paul's even gotten snaps at tackle with the starters because of how many injuries we had, with including Andrew Wiley and Brandon Coleman in that Jets preseason game. He's definitely making the roster. He's good to go. Michael Dieter's good to go. Ricky Strongberg, don't sleep. Maybe that 6th guy if we do keep 6 interior offensive linemen. If we don't keep Ricky Strongberg, I at least hope they stow him away on the practice squad somehow, because I like his talent. Again, I may be higher on him than this current regime is. We'll see where that goes. Offensive tackles, obviously your starters when healthy, Brandon Coleman and Andrew Wiley. I forgot to get rid of that question mark right there. Now, Andrew Wiley's good to go. I didn't even notice that. That's been there since I've been doing the roster projections back in May. Cornelius Lucas is, I guess, your backup, even though I do not love Cornelius Lucas as much as a lot of people in his fan base do, where a lot of people feel like he should be one of our starting tackles. I'm not that high on him at all. And then Trent Scott, I mean, I guess by default, I do not like Trent Scott. Honestly, at this point, The reason why, and I put Braden Daniels there on the screen. I only have us keeping 4, but I put Braden Daniels on that screen because at this point, I'm personally rooting for Braden Daniels to make this roster over Trent Scott. I've seen enough from Trent Scott to know I am good. The way he was getting whooped by any and everybody in that Jets joint practice and them one-on-ones. And then we get to that Dolphins preseason game, and Chop Robinson, as raw as a rookie can be as an edge rusher, great talent, elite ceiling. I think he had like a 10 relative athletic score, like ridiculous ceiling and potential. But I mean, he got beat immediately. That wasn't just a matter of I just outworked you and it took me like 5 seconds to get to the quarterback. It was like an instant. It looked like he was going against Trent Scott was blocking against like a nuanced Nick Bosa type of pass rusher. Like Chop Robinson made Trent Scott look like the rookie. I mean, I have no faith in Trent Scott. If there's ever any reason he has to go out there and play for us due to injuries or whatever, Jaden Daniels might as well just go ahead and sit out as well. It's not even worth it. I'm that low on Trent Scott. Again, I'm low on Cornelius Lucas, but I mean, Trent Scott is the guy he's competing against to be one of the top tackles on his team. That's not much competition. So I'm rooting for Braden Daniels because even though it's been against backups, he's looked really good at right tackle, and I'm surprised. This regime was doing him dirty at first, and I mean, understandably so, because the previous regime drafted him to be a developmental left tackle. That looks like that's a forecast that if that ever works out, that's probably 3 years down the line. Then this regime came in and was like, all right, we'll try you a tackle. And it didn't look that good. All right, you didn't look good at left tackle. Let's try you a guard. That didn't necessarily look that great either. But in these preseason games, both against the Jets and the Dolphins at right tackle, Braden Daniels has looked pretty solid. Not perfect, but at least enough to where, hey, Trent Scott, you may need to watch your back. Now moving on. Interior defensive lineman, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. This is where we're about to have some fun. This safety group, I know when y'all see it, y'all are going to be like, that's way too many safeties, but I really just don't know who to cut. And I also don't know what position group I would add to take away one of those safeties because I feel like we almost need all of them. It's bad, but interior defensive lineman is the most obvious one. Of course, your top 2 guys, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. Then you're next to a Johnny Newton as like another D-tackle, 3-tech rotated in heavily. I feel like he's going to play a lot once he's healthy. And then John Ridgeway is your 0-tech, your pure nose tackle, double team eater that would allow everybody else to get their one-on-ones. Those are your interior defensive linemen, case closed. Only reason I have Darian Mathis there is because he was a 2nd-round pick just from a couple of years ago, but he hasn't been very good, man. He hasn't stood out. I remember one play in training camp a couple of weeks ago. Brian Robinson ripped off like a big touchdown run, like 40, 50-plus yards or something like that, and then our defensive lines coach pulled him to the side and chewed him out on the sideline, like yelling at him and everything, letting him know like that was your fault. You're the reason that happened and things like that. And then I remember like later on in training camp, like a few days later after that incident, Dan Quinn was like, while everybody was doing team drills, Dan Quinn was personally coaching up for Darian Mathis 1v1 to the side. Like, it seems like they're trying everything that they can to try to get the most out of this guy, and I just haven't seen it be enough yet. I just have not seen it. Now, edge rusher, this is where things get interesting. I see them keeping 6. Again, just based off of the template from last year, they kept 6. And that doesn't necessarily mean that this regime will, but I mean, what else do I have to go off of? Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Farrell are your starting edge rushers right now, but Dante Fowler will be technically your starting situational pass rusher. When it's 3rd and long, he's on that field. Cleveland Farrell got to come up off that field, man. And I like what I've seen from Cleveland Farrell. He's been better this offseason so far than I expected, but it's still not enough to where Dante Fowler is not obviously the guy on the field. When it's an obvious passing down 3rd and long, just let Dante Fowler go get after that quarterback, man. He's probably the best at doing it on this entire roster, even though Dorrance Armstrong is a nice blend of both. He gives you the obvious passing down pass rush upside, and he also gives you the dominant edge setting that Cleveland Farrell brings as well against the run. But KJ Henry, man, I'm not gonna lie, because remember, this regime drafted Javonte Jean-Baptiste as a 7th-round rookie just a couple of months ago. KJ Henry, I believe, is a 5th-round pick from last year from the previous regime. So and based on what I was hearing from camp, I was hearing more about Javonte Jean-Baptiste than I was hearing about KJ Henry. But then against the Dolphins in that preseason game just a couple of days ago, when Dorrance Armstrong was out there with the starters, no other starters in that front 7. It was literally Frankie Louvu, Dorrance Armstrong. Those were the only starting guys in that front 7 against the Dolphins, even the very first defensive possession of the game. KJ Henry was the opposite starter of Dorrance Armstrong. Again, Cleveland Farrell, Dante Fowler out. They didn't want to play starters just like Bobby Wagner and a bunch of other guys. But instead of Javonte Jean-Baptiste or anybody else, KJ Henry was that starting edge rusher, and he held his own. So I would say his name is probably an orange because he may play more than we think. And then Javonte Jean-Baptiste, again, I've heard a lot of media members rave about him throughout the training camp process. I've heard his name come up more than I've heard about KJ Henry's, but just based on how the snaps went against the Dolphins in that preseason game, maybe KJ Henry's above him on the depth chart right now. But Javonte Jean-Baptiste, even though the sack he did get against the Dolphins was more so a coverage sack and him just kind of, staying at it, it took him like 5-7 seconds to get to that quarterback, and under normal circumstances that wouldn't be a sack, but it was just great coverage from the DBs, so shouts out to them. So Javonte Jean-Baptiste, his length, I've heard people always compliment that and say that's one of the reasons he wins. He's definitely going to make this team, but I think he's behind KJ Henry in playing time. And then Jamin Davis, I mean, you could argue that strip sack was enough for him to make the roster, but even just beyond that, even before the strip sack, there was a time where the quarterback, I forgot who the quarterback was for the Dolphins at the time, but he rolled out of the pocket and then he he tried to throw the ball. Jamin Davis, first of all, the athleticism to keep up with the quarterback off the edge, and then to time the jump, and then have the athleticism to get high up enough to bat the ball down. That was an elite athletic play. We probably only have like a handful of guys. You can count it between either one hand or both hands at most. The guys on this entire roster that could have made a play like that as far as athleticism goes. So Jamin Davis showing flashes, and then now he's starting to become, I wouldn't dare give him the title of nuanced pass rusher as a title, but that was a nuanced pass rush in that, for that strip sack, man. To know that you gotta step on him on the outside, use that against him. He oversteps a little bit with his kick step, and then you kind of juke back inside. Again, Jamin Davis doesn't have much bend to him, which would be nice. That would be that's like the main thing he's missing right now from being a fairly potent edge rusher right now, pass rusher specifically. His bend is not there yet, but agility and athleticism, quickness and explosion, you saw all of that in that strip sack. And then also not even just to get the sack, but to hit the ball out while you do it. I think that may have been enough. And at the very worst, man, especially with the injury to Jordan McGee, we're about to get to the off-ball linebackers next. At the very least, Jamin Davis makes this roster as an off-ball linebacker. He was never that bad at inside linebacker, y'all. There's no way. Look at this inside linebacker group. You think Jamin Davis isn't good enough to, even if he wasn't making the position switch to edge rusher, you think Jamin Davis is so bad he can't make this linebacker group at this point? Again, Jordan McGee, I only have him on the screen right now. His name is in gray because he's hurt for an extended period of time. They said it will not be season ending, but it's for a long time. He's going to miss weeks, and even when he does come back healthy, I mean, are we just going to throw him out there to the Wolves as a 5th-round rookie that has missed a lot of his offseason, and then, of course, subsequently going to miss a lot of the regular season as well? He's going to basically come out as like a recently drafted rookie in the middle of the season by the time he's ready, whenever he is ready. So I don't expect him to contribute much just this season in general, even though he was ascending development-wise. Frankie Louvu raved about him more than once throughout training camp practices. Like multiple days he talked about Jordan McGee and how quickly he's learning the defense and everything like that. So when he is back, I am expecting him to be a really good player, but I'm just not exactly sure how soon. But either way, his name is in gray because he's hurt, so he's not going to be on this 53-man roster. He's more than likely going to start on some injured reserve lists, some pup lists, whatever, all of those type of things. And so then you have Dominique Hampton making the transition from college free safety to training camp strong safety box star position to most recently the past week, including that joint practice and preseason game against the Dolphins, as just a pure inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker, which is an incredible transition. I don't think people understand how difficult that is. That may be even tougher than going from off-ball linebacker to edge rusher, which Jamin Davis is doing. Going from, I mean, now granted, he played in a lot of places for Washington in college just this past season, but he played free safety a lot. To go from free safety to off-ball linebacker, you skip like 3 or 4 steps there, man. So that's a big transition for him, but he looked pretty decent. They called a pass interference against him against the Dolphins, but I thought it was pretty decent coverage. I thought that was a petty flag to throw out there. I liked what I saw him do in the run stopping wise in one of those plays where the Dolphins were backed up. They were on their side of the field, and he like made a really good run stop for like only like a 2-3 yard gain or something like that. Of course, you prefer for it to be stopped at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, but it was still pretty decent. So I think Dominique Hampton will make this team, at least as a linebacker, especially with Jordan McGee out. And the Anthony Pittman is going to make this team just because, first of all, veteran-wise, I mean, he's probably next in line for linebacker-wise. Like, I mean, it's crazy as it sounds, and it may not necessarily be the best-sounding thing of all time, and it does make you wonder about this linebacker group now just a little bit. but Anthony Pittman is probably your third linebacker right now, only behind Frankie Louisville and Bobby Wagner. But most importantly, he's a strong special teams guy. He's a special teams ace. He was literally the Lions' best special teams player last year. That's one of the main reasons we signed him. So he's making this roster regardless, but it's just how much will he actually end up playing linebacker? I believe at a certain point against the Dolphins, when Frankie Louisville went out, it was Anthony Pittman and Dominique Hampton as your inside linebackers out there. And so those are probably your next two, just based off a depth chart. And then again, Jordan McGee, once he's healthy, he's gonna come right back and replace somebody. Dominique Hampton, or maybe Dominique Hampton by then develops and then he's ahead of Anthony Pittman in the depth chart by then. And then Jordan McGee and Dominique Hampton make up your backup inside linebackers. But again, my main point is Jamin Davis can't make this linebacker group right here. He's not that bad, y'all. Y'all got to stop playing with his name. It's not that bad. Now, moving on to outside cornerbacks. Obviously, Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St-Juste, and Michael Davis are your top three. Who are your top two? At this point, I have no idea. Based off of this past week, Emmanuel Forbes is one of them. But I haven't heard much from Michael Davis. Benjamin St-Juste gave up that touchdown just like Emmanuel Forbes gave up a touchdown against a backup wide receiver against the Jets. Benjamin St-Juste gave up a touchdown against a backup wide receiver against the Dolphins just a couple of days ago. But Benjamin St-Juste and Dan Quinn even acknowledged the fact that Emmanuel Forbes had a really good week. This was his best week all offseason. And if you notice, I mean, a lot of people, including me, forgot he was even on the team against the Dolphins in that preseason game. Now, I'm a trenches guy, so that's usually what I'm paying attention to. And then after a certain point, I was like, was Emmanuel Forbes even in this game? Did he sit out like a lot of the other starters did, where they didn't play a single snap? With even like outside of injuries, they're just taking the vet day off. But no, Emmanuel Forbes was out there for at least the first possession, and he just wasn't really targeted. He had good coverage, and they didn't even think to try him. And again, he had a pretty good couple of practices leading up to that. He had a good practice, joint practice against the Dolphins as well. So if I had to pick one guy that I feel like between the three will start, it's probably Emmanuel Forbes, even though I don't want him covering Mike Evans. I prefer a bigger, taller Benjamin St-Juste and Michael Davis covering him. But I feel like that last spot is up between Benjamin St-Juste and Michael Davis. That's actually kind of crazy, too. It's kind of like the Georgia Bulldog situation, even though our cornerback group is just better. It's like way less. It's more of like a who's not the worst, it's who's the best. Like we have like Dalen Everett, who's obviously one. Then we have Julian Humphrey and Daniel Harris competing for that third spot. It's kind of similar to this, even though actually it's really different when I think about it. Because I love the Georgia cornerback core right now. This Commanders one, little shaky. But Tariq Castro-Fields looked like one of our best players on defense against the Dolphins in that preseason game. So I love him as our fourth corner. But don't sleep on Chiggy Anusium, because he made a lot of plays against the Dolphins in that preseason game. He had a pass breakup deep down the field. He was so aggressive against the run that one of the Dolphins receivers had to get a holding penalty to stop him from blowing up the play. So that would have been a run stop for Chiggy if that didn't happen. So he was all over the place. So if we do end up keeping a fifth outside corner, don't sleep on Chiggy Anusium. Then star/slot, even though this is really just a pure slot, Mike Sainristil is your starting slot corner. Even in 12 personnel presented by the Dolphins when their starters were out there, Mike Sainristil was still on that field. That's very big news right there, because some people, even though I've already told y'all based off of his tape in Michigan, even based off of what he did against the Jets in preseason and joint practice, what he did against the Dolphins in joint practice, even leading up to that Dolphins preseason game from a couple of days ago, I said Mike Sainristil should be on the field every play possible unless he's tired. Even if it's goal line, even if it's 3rd and 1, 4th and inches, obviously running the ball. I know he's small, but that guy makes plays. And so it was music to my ears to see, well, really music to my eyes, I guess, to see that when the Dolphins lined up in 12 personnel, that's one running back, 2 tight ends, 2 big tight ends out there. Clearly, their intentions are more than likely to run the ball in that situation. Mike Sainristil was still out there on the field making plays. Again, Frankie Louisville took over the first defensive drive. Mike Sainristil put his hand on his shoulder and said, "You chill out. I got it from here." Took over the next drive against the run and everything, making run stops, you know, getting off of blockers, tight ends, and things like that, and making plays against the run, man. And then I guess if we were to keep a backup slot corner, it would probably be Noah Igbenogany. Maybe. Not exactly sure if it would be. If we, I'm not sure if they will. But if they did, I mean, the previous regime again kept 2 last year. Maybe this regime keeps 2, but as of right now, I just feel like Mike Sainristil has such a big gap over everybody else. And then again, I have too many safeties, so maybe this is where I keep Noah Benogany, and then I keep 2 slot corners, and then I get rid of one of the safeties. We're about to get there as of right now. As of right now, I have us keeping 6 safeties. The last regime only kept 4, so the jump from 4 to 6 is absolutely insane. I understand. I know I look crazy, and this is more than likely not going to happen, but this was the toughest group to really decide who's going to make the team or not. Like I've been saying for months now, for a couple of months now, even before we got to training camp, this is arguably the deepest position group on this team, and it goes to show when you're trying to do 53-man roster projections, it really is, man. Jeremy Chin and Jartavius Quan-Barton, your obvious starting safeties, but then after that, I've been hearing about Percy Butler being the 3rd safety in rotation, but ever since Derek Forrest has come back healthy, he's been like it's been like when we get to the backup safeties, it's Tyler Owens and Derek Forrest immediately after Jeremy Chin and Quan-Barton get off the field. But even before Derek Forrest got hurt, Percy Butler was that 3rd safety. Like if there were ever a 3rd safety on the field with Jeremy Chin and Quan-Barton, it's Percy Butler. When Jeremy Chin and Quan-Barton sit down and we go to the 2nd stringers, it's Derek Forrest. So those guys are like dead even. And then just the love, the fact that Tyler Owens, everybody just assumes he's making the roster at this point, brings tears to my eyes, man. I'm so happy to see that this athletic freak, this absolute alien of a specimen, this ultimate ceiling, built in a lab safety guy, has already developed enough at least to where he's not raw to the point that we try to storm away on the practice squad. This guy's probably actually going to make the 53-man roster. I'm seeing people even say on Twitter, I think it was Ben Standig or somebody that said, like, saying Tyler Owens will make this 53-man roster isn't even a hot take anymore, which is incredible because back in March, when I was praying that we would end up drafting him, I got him in 2 of my mock drafts that I did for us leading up to the draft. I had no idea that he even had a chance to make the 53-man roster. I was just hoping, please draft him, and at the very least, just keep him on the practice squad until he develops or something like that. The fact that this guy has already expedited his development to the point that we're just assuming he's going to make the 53-man roster already as an undrafted free agent is incredible, because that goes to show that, you know, that elite ceiling, maybe he has a better chance of reaching it since he's further ahead than we expected at this point. And then Jeremy Reeves may make the team more than likely just as a top special teams guy. This coaching regime really likes him. He has not been good in these preseason games though. Now he did lay a big hit on one of those Dolphins receivers on one of those plays in that preseason game, but against the Jets and the Dolphins, he had big time missed tackles. That one time where they tried to run like a reverse or something like that, I forgot how the play even started, but I mean everybody was around the guy 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Jeremy Reeves had him and just completely whiffed on the tackle. The guy wraps all the way back around to the other side of the field and ends up gaining a few yards. And even before then against the Jets, he took a bad angle and missed a tackle against, I believe, a running back or something like that. He's been missing tackles all over the place is my point. So love him as a special team. I mean, he's an all-pro Revo for a reason. So that's why it was really tough not to at least keep 6 safeties, man. I don't know who's going to get cut. I think if anything, it probably would be Jeremy Reeves, because you also have other strong special teams contributors, again, like Anthony Pittman. We literally brought him here from the Lions to be a special teams ace. Tyler Owens also excels there. He's arguably shined the most as far as being a gunner throughout this preseason so far, so that does make Jeremy Reeves less necessary to keep, but I love him as a personality. The relationship that he has with Tress Way, I love every time he's in front of a camera. I'm rooting for the guy, but it's tough. It's a really tough group, man. I don't know whose spot he would take. Percy Butler, again, when they run 3 safeties out there with the starters, Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvo on the field, Jonathan Allen on the field, I'm talking. Percy Butler is that 3rd safety on the field. And then when they move to the 2nd string defense, Derek Forrest and Tyler Owens have been on the field. I just don't know how Jeremy Reeves supersedes any of those guys on the depth chart. We'll see, though. It's tough. And then specialist-wise, Tress Way, great punter, great guy. Tyler Ott, Pro Bowl long snapper. Going from Cameron Cheeseman to him is arguably one of the biggest upgrades we made the entire offseason. And then kicker, got to be a mystery kicker. We already cut Ramiz Ahmed. Riley Patterson already showed you he's terrible. Like, I mean, most of us already knew he was. Again, Ramiz Ahmed was the backup to Chris Blewett. Y'all remember Chris Blewett. Ramiz Ahmed was his backup. Well, Riley Patterson was the backup to Ramiz Ahmed. Riley Patterson was the backup to the backup of Chris Blewett. That should tell you everything you need to know. So right now, I don't know who our kicker will be, but it's definitely not Riley Patterson or anybody that's already on this roster right now. So I don't know exactly who it's going to be, but eventually a lot of these teams out there who have 2 kickers, when we cut to 53 men in like a week, we're going to go and scoop up one of those guys. And remember, we're waiver wire priority number 2. Only the Panthers have a higher priority than us. So if there's a kicker out there that we want, we're more than likely going to get them. And any kicker that gets cut by any other team right now are more than likely better than what we have in Riley Patterson right now. So it's going to be somebody other than Riley Patterson. I hope we go for the best kicker available, but I'm guaranteed, I'm for sure knowing that whatever kicker we pick up is better than what we currently have in Riley Patterson. So mystery kicker for sure. Don't exactly know who it is. Maybe my next roster projection before they come out with the roster, maybe in a few days, I can try to guess who that is, but I know for a fact it ain't Riley Patterson. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all the content, man. I really appreciate y'all. I may do another roster projection video before they officially come out with the 53. I think within like the next week or so. We'll see. I believe it's like right after that last preseason game against the Patriots. We'll see. So make sure y'all stay tuned for all of that. I have a lot more content on the way. There's no reason I'm not putting out at least one video a day. And again, now that I have access to all 22 footage, especially NFL footage, y'all are about to start getting some all 22 film breakdowns, especially for those of y'all that are my channel members that are going to get exclusive film sessions sometimes. Because I mean, I'm even looking at it as, even if I'm just trying to just like real quick, let's just spend 10 minutes to see how Emmanuel Forbes did this week type of thing. You know, that's going to be the type of stuff I give channel members exclusively. So if you're not one yet, go become one, because that's the type of stuff I'm working on. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Do not leave this video though. Do not leave this video. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm immediately right from editing this and uploading this, going straight to yard work. Again, I've been super busy the past week. Football's coming back, and I've just been even more busy outside of football, even outside of that. So I'm sorry for all of the mistakes I've been making in these videos and things like that, but my head's just all over the place right now. But either way, most importantly, please get in that comment section. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points, any of my selections, and let me know who you would have in your 53-man roster projection. And I mean like literally everybody. Run down all 53 players, all of that type of stuff. And I really appreciate y'all. I will catch y'all later. I'm out.